In our technological age, the stress is laid on knowledge rather than on discernment, on data rather than on wisdom. We're led to believe that information is the same thing as intelligence, but what is information if you don't have the wisdom to know how to make sense of it? People have been searching for wisdom since mankind's inception, a framework to inform their lives, a set of ethical guidelines by which to steer their course. In today's modern world, where some worry persists about us being in an age of a crisis of character, that search for wisdom is more important than ever. Taking a step in that direction, here is the search for wisdom in Greenville, South Carolina.
So philosophy translates to the love of wisdom, and the reason that this is still relevant and important in people's lives is that wisdom is what underlies all good decision making. If you don't have wisdom, you don't have the basis to make good decisions, you don't have the basis to make good choices, you don't have the basis to make good relationships. And so studying the past and understanding how people have developed good governments, good systems of ethics, and good decision-making rubrics is still important. So what I teach my students is to read and to think critically. We read about philosophical treatises from the past, but we also read about important things that are happening today. One of the things that I teach in my Intro to Philosophy class that I think is incredibly powerful that has to do with self-wisdom is the way in which we rely on default settings. So the default settings we have are just the same as the presets on our car radios. We have default settings where we automatically do various things and we make various kinds of decisions and we're comfortable with various kinds of things. And we can function just fine with the default settings that we have, but if we start to identify them, we can make conscious choices about whether or not that's actually what we want. We can question whether what we say we value actually matches up with our behavior. And so wisdom is really trying to figure out how to live consciously and make good choices, identifying these default settings and making better choices for ourselves every day, which can be hard.
The struggle to wake up to a higher consciousness is at the heart of philosophy, and it's rooted in the very depths of wisdom. But the love of wisdom isn't limited to philosophy, however. Some people strive to find a more practical application of it in religion.
The ultimate goal for us is to strive to work upon ourselves, to start with an honest self-assessment, figure out what is our purpose, what are our strengths and our weaknesses as a person, and to work on ourselves, to refine our souls. Self-reflection is the first step in spiritual practice, in wisdom, and in the path of meaning in Judaism. The first path, spiritual path in Judaism, begins with the concept of humility, which in Judaism, humility means being nothing more or nothing less than what you are, being honest with yourself and knowing who you are. And that means not thinking you're more than what you are and not degrading yourself and thinking that you are less than what you are. If you are a highly intelligent person, don't put yourself down and think that you're stupid. Be honest with yourself about who you are, what your expertise is, what your knowledge is. But be honest also with yourself about self-reflect on what your weaknesses are, on what your areas that you need to work on. Every individual, Judaism recognizes every individual has their own spiritual curriculum. Every individual has their own path that they need to seek for meaning. And in Judaism, the commandments exist to help give guidance, to help serve as a path to lead people on that. But everybody has different aspects of the commandments that they need to work on. Some people need to work on being more compassionate, and that means going to visit the sick and causing yourself to engage in activities that build compassion. It could be generosity that a person needs to work on, and that would include being more generous with your time, with your money, to help others. So everybody has different things that they need to work on, and the commandments give a path to people to reflect upon and think about what attributes that they need to improve upon and work on.
Though Jewish people are called the people of the book in the Middle East, there is also another group who find deep comfort in the Bible: Christians.
This wisdom that God offers, that He has placed in His Word, is not esoteric. It's not elusive. It is practical. It is, in fact, other passages in the book of Proverbs describe wisdom as life itself. It is how to live. It goes right down to everyday living. Part of the futility of the way of the world is that it can offer momentary success, periodic happiness, but they're all dependent on circumstances. And even when in the way of the world an individual achieves a level of prestige among others, a level of material wealth, to achieve a position of even great power among others. All of those things seem so enticing, so desirable while you are grasping for them. But the reality is, once you get them, the universal testimony of people in the world who have followed that path and achieved those things is that they don't satisfy. So numerous well-known multi-millionaire or billionaires have testified, well, in answer to the question, what would it take to satisfy you? How much money would be enough? And their answer in various words is essentially a little bit more, as testimony that it never satisfies.
From the Bible, which has an account of the serpent as it pertains to the story of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, we turn toward the medical community, which also associates wisdom in its complicated tangle with mortality.
I am originally from Poland, and certainly there is a tremendous amount of wisdom in the heritage of my country. My forefathers from Poland suffered enormous atrocities, and recovering from that part of the history brings forth lots of wisdom, whether it's in poetry, music, discussions, feuilletons. That is very helpful in my work. As a nurse coach and life coach, I encounter clients who are searching for meaning as they survive near-death experiences and perhaps their loved ones suffering. Anyone who encounters suffering and poses questions to search for wisdom through meaning are very courageous persons. I find that work very important, and creating an environment of safe space and trust is very important. And I usually hear that wisdom inspired by previous experiences, people's culture, their roots, their recollections of wisdom from their ancestry. And we are cherishing those moments, and those are very intimate self-care plan aspects.
In all the examples given, from a philosopher to a rabbi to a pastor to a life coach, there's one common denominator: people digging down deeper than the surface realities and gaining insight by burrowing within. These are just 4 examples, however, of the search for wisdom in Greenville, South Carolina.